at that. Something a little bit different for you today. So we've got a slightly different coloured Mk2 Golf today. You know, normally black. This one's white. This one isn't mine. This started as a Mk2 8-valve GTI, but as we can see, it has more than 8 valves. But the story and how we get to that is quite complicated, and the history behind that engine. So let's try and talk you through it. Well, this all started when, for a bit of a TLC for my car, I went to go and get that tailgate. Mine's a bit rusty behind the number plate and the lights. I need a good one, and that was one with the glass drilled for a spoiler, so you know, a little upgrade for mine later. So I'm there at Mk2 Spares UK talking to Matthew, and one of his regulars, Jamie, comes up and says, "Are you Ben?" Yeah, that's my name. "Oh, I've seen you on the socials or on Mk2 Sathy's Mk2 YouTube channel." "Oh yeah, I've got this 16 valve, been trying to get it to run for a few years. Do you mind coming and have a look?" It's not too far away. I've travelled all the way up to Norfolk. What's another 30 minutes? And followed Jamie and presented with this car under a cover. Sort of as it is now, maybe a little bit covered in leaves and dust, but not in a working condition. So we came up with a plan: get it down to me, get it delivered, and I'll get it working, because it's been a long time. I think originally he had it was an 8-valve and it went pop. And at some point this engine came along with an opportunity to buy this one, and it's got a bit of a special history, this one, because this one was actually owned way back in about the year 2000 by Performance VW editor Elliot Roberts. So this was in the engine out of the Buzzbox Mark 1, silver Mark 1, which the biggest telltale really is the unusual choice of Weber Alpha throttle bodies. So you've got here a Weber DCOE manifold like you'd have for twin carbs, but we've got throttle bodies instead. And that at the time was probably revolutionary. I guess mid to late 90s, maybe. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it was 80s. Someone can fact check me on that. But this is the first one I'd ever seen in person, and since then they're popping out of the woodwork, and even Jamie's bought another one that's got them in as well. So yeah, getting them running again. They'd already tried a few things, and the original Weber Alpha ECU, which are, if I remember right, they were quite difficult to access and map, and usually you had to go to a Weber specialist for that one. So that had been removed, and a Max ECU, a modern little mini ECU compact, had been put in place, but it wasn't working. No spark, no fuel, no nothing. So they'd already done some of the job, but it's what else was needed to get it going. And now it runs, as we saw it drive in earlier. So I'll talk you through that in a second. Let's start with the engine spec. Like, what is it, or what do we think it is? So we think it originally was a KR, so 1.8 out of a Golf 16 valve. It's had some work done it, like the Weber Alpha conversion. Not entirely sure what's been done inside. So some articles it was featured in said it's been bored out to 1.9. It looks like fairly recently, we'll say recently, it actually apparently hasn't run for 15 years. That was one of the things. So it's passed around, not doing very much. People trying to get it to work and trying different bits, probably adding things along the way. So I think the head was so clean in the top. The head's so clean, and it probably has had some machining work done on it, maybe to fit larger cams. It's got a set of, I can't remember if they were Piper 2.8 somethings, can't remember. It's a while. They'll be on a photo somewhere. But they're not standard. We've got a Piper pulley, and they say the inside of the head is super clean, apart from a bit of light sort of alloy corrosion that was sort of dealt with early on. So we think we've got a 1.9, we've got cams, don't know about the head being flowed. We've got these throttle bodies that are quite small. They're only 40, but that should mean they are 40mm. They should be quite good as a road car, you know. We've got a 4-branch, I think it's a Miltech. So that's the engine spec we know about. We've got probably, hopefully a better flowing exhaust. The verdict's out on the collector on these Miltechs. Throttle bodies, cams, sounds like fun. So let's start with why didn't this thing run? Why didn't it run? Let's list through all the things that we've had to work on, or I've had to work on, certainly. So we've converted to a different ECU, but one of the first things, okay, you need a crank signal. There is, if we can get a light, there is a external trigger wheel added. The Weber would have had a really big, almost big metal disc added. This is smaller, and that's right there. So the gap on this one, I don't know if we can see it. Let's see, yeah, we might be able to see it. Yeah. See that? So we think this engine hasn't run for 15 years. It was in a Mark 1 Golf, 2000 or 2002, somewhere around there, and we think so. It hasn't been run for 15 years and has just changed hands. So at some point it was, you know, on Weber Alpha, different setup, different ECU, some different triggers and things, inputs, and between now and then it's had a rebuild. And one of the things I think was missing, because it hasn't been running, it hasn't actually run. So it was incredibly tight, probably one of the tightest engines I've ever come across. And it would crank so slow, it was probably doing 40 RPM. So slow, if there was still the writing on the cam belt, you could read it as it went past. And one of the first things to get started is we need to see an RPM signal. We need the crank trigger, so we've got a new, for the new ECU, we've got a 36 -1 tooth crank pulley wheel added on. And yeah, with 40 RPM, it's not really enough to start. So we've had to do a few things just to get it going. So make sure it's got a little bit of oil in the balls, remove the ancillaries, and put, although we've got a replacement starter, put a known good VW starter on that just allowed it to go a little bit higher RPM, and that got the engine turning. But we needed to see that we're definitely getting RPM in the ECU. So at one point, trigger wheel on the end of an impact gun with the sensor, just so I knew I was getting a signal. Definitely getting a signal. That confirms the wiring and the ECU is all good. Okay, we've got that. What's next? Okay, so what about the fueling setup on this car? First thing, a little schoolboy error. As this came to me, the in and the out for the fuel hoses were just the wrong way around. So this poor setup is never going to work like that, because you've got the fuel being pumped to the back of the fuel pressure regulator instead of the other way around. So that was a little simple one to fix. But even with that fixed, the old underfloor fuel housing reservoir thing for the main pump was past it. So that was leaking, even at just the when you prime and the key on. It's just all the fuel in the tank just dripping straight on the floor. Great. Let's have a look at that, because it's been replaced. That was a little mission on its own, little mini project. Put in one of the, because well, to find a good plastic housing these days, if yours is still working and it's leak free, then that's great. All the best to you. But on this one, without any prompt from me, Jamie went and bought the Pro Alloy Effort, which is very flash, and we'll have a look at that now. Originally, this setup came with these. These are Weber's own injectors. They look awful lot like the Bosch EV1. So these are Weber IW31s, and that's period correct on that. Problem with this one is when it was living in a Mark 1, it probably had 1 or 2 front enders, and something, maybe a hit here, I don't know, a tree, a post, a car, I'm not sure what, and some of this end, this part had probably been hit. So this injector, we see here, has actually got a little bit of impact damage, and this one is dead. So you're trying to get this to run. We've got 3 good ones and 1 bad. So 3 good, 1 bad, and if you move this one around, the problem follows this one. Okay, get a new one of these. Okay, right. A new one of these is about 250 something pounds. Why? I think they were used in maybe a Delta Integrale or a Lamborghini Diablo, which is an unfortunate thing to pair with, really. A 1.2 Skoda would be better, probably. But these are 300 and something cc or 270, I can't remember now. I've been looking at so many of these. So we need to find, needed to find a replacement. So what we've got here, if we, I don't know if it helps to take this off, maybe. These are Bosch EV1 injectors, 250 cc's from high impedance from a Saab. So 2.3 non-turbo Saabs. This chap who was selling these had not long refurbished them and then didn't use them, so I'll have those, please. I did try some. I should never do. Some things we get from China are great. You know, they make some things CNC very good. Why somebody would set up a factory to make injectors, which you've got the pintle valve, the plastic, the moulding, the rubber, the electrical connection, and they'd be rubbish? I do not know. So we'll probably be able to find a clip of just at the key on prime pressure, the injector pissing out. Brand new injectors. The electrical connector is off. If we go to key on where the fuel pump primes, it's leaking out of the box. There's 2 of them doing it as well. Rubbish. The buy cheap, buy twice definitely happened, but I got a refund as long as I smashed them and showed pictures of them.
Excellent.
Very weird. Anyway, thank you, Chinese people. Right, so we've got the fuel sorted, we've got the spark sorted. What's left? So we've got the engine's now turning over. You know, or at least when it fired up. Oh, this is great. This is great actually. So first fire up. We should probably have a clip of that somewhere as well. None of the exhaust gaskets were probably up to the sort of standard that I like. I like the L-ring ones. I don't know which ones were used. They were kind of the tin foil backed ones, and the first start blew straight out. So a nice big cough of soot and exhaust gas. On sticking with exhaust, why not? So we've got this Miltech, which is quite nice. There was a connection to a very bad boy exhaust, so Jamie's level of taste for his 8 valve doesn't match mine, and I'm sure it doesn't match his these days either. But that was so loud that we couldn't go really any further with that. It was deafening. It was like the police are gonna. Oh yeah, and that was the thing. The tailpipe kind of did that about that long. Really, it was interesting. Bozuku style, I think it's called. Anyway, so we sourced after me persuading it, a very I think appropriate for a road car, the 2 1/4 inch 3-box system from Traxlag. I'm not sponsored, but I do like them. They do fit nice. So we've dealt with the world's loudest exhaust, or a good crack at it. We've got the fuel, we've got the spark, the engine's now at a sensible RPM, but at that point it's running like a diesel. Sounds horrible. Got a imbalance sort of sound. So is it coming from the adjustability of all these linkages here. Is it something there? We had the running on 3 cylinders problem with the injector. This thing throws everything at me. One thing we had, which is guaranteed to make your 16 valve sound like a tractor, that's probably rude to tractors, is the sporty cams that have been fitted. I'm pointing at them because they're under here. You can't see them at the minute. We might have a picture of that. We're a tooth out. So, timing belt is done fine. That's timed. But the intercam timing was a tooth out, and that's guaranteed to make it sound really strange.
Is that on the chain, is it? That's
on the chain, yeah, the cam chain. So, unfortunately, to put that right, you have to take the cams out. So that was, yeah, that was an evening with a beer. Okay, that's the imbalance sorted. We've got 4 cylinders. We've got the engine running smooth. What's left? Well, we have Mr. Red Paint at some point has been here.
Red paint that gets everywhere.
Well, it's actually red paint and red powder coat. I think this is powder coat. And same with the gearbox. The gearbox was powder coat. We've had to change that one. But the throttle bodies, initially they'd come from Weber. I think with a black coating. That's probably what they were in the Buzzbox Mark 1. These have been painted red, or powder coated red, and that included inside the throttles. And if we look here, we've got the little bearings from Weber. So around about this point, in the middle of this left hand, we call this the left hand. It says on it left hand, LH. There we go. So the left hand Weber throttle body. We even had paint on the bearings. So what this would do, you have got throttle return springs inside these on both sides. Plus you've got these here. But if you gave it a really big, nearly wide open blip, it might come down to idle. But if you're just lightly pressing the throttle, the left hand throttle would stick open due to the powder coat or paint on the back of the bearing. Excellent. To change that and sort that out, the whole throttle body has to be disassembled. The butterfly plates have to come out. The shaft, the spindle thing has to come out. All completely disassembled. The internals somehow were painted red. Even the spring that's in the middle was painted red. So my can of thinners has earned overtime, really. But so that's all sorted. We've got this Weber throttle linkage. Very mechanical and fun to watch when it's operating. This is new because I don't know if it was a victim of the aforementioned crash, or if it was deleted because maybe somebody didn't like how it looks. It's quite a feature of the engine bay. So when this came to me, this had, I think, what was a motorbike brake cable operating from here, and it was like trying to crush a brick with your foot. It was very, very stiff, and it wasn't ideal. This is the proper setup. This is from Weber. You'll see this on the twin 45 carbs. Yeah, used for years and works very well. Fully adjustable. So rather than boring you with going through the whole process of getting these throttles balanced, so each one of them idles, drawing the same amount of vacuum, and you're getting full throttle when you press full throttle, and nothing's, you're not getting a horrible stretch on the throttle cable. Let me get on there. That looks nice and loose, but that is moving. You can hear the throttle pedal moving, and it's not under any real stress. So things we can adjust. So we have these here are the sort of idle set points. So they are linked together by this piece here. So this links the two together. And if you adjust this, you have to adjust this ratio here. We have, if one of your throttles is lagging behind, then you've got the little idle bypass screws. So that lets a little bit of air through. And then just so that you can make this linkage work for your setup, rather than if this was on twin carbs, this would probably be set up slightly differently. even for this engine. So you've got adjustment on the bar here and different position holes here, because you want to make sure that when you press your pedal, you're not only, you know, if you adjust this, if you choose hole number 1 or hole number 5, it changes the relationship between this and your pedal. You don't want it to be going over the fully open position, because it will do that, if, you know, or you don't want it to be only opening halfway. So just find the right one for you, maybe use a friend or the missus. To tackle the problem of the throttle cable, this is what I do, and that's why I thought this worked quite nice. So we've used the throttle cable outer from a Mk2 Golf carb setup, because you get the nice connections, the nice rubber mountings that will be under here. We're not going to disturb that in a minute. That will go right the way to the pedal, but we've used the Weber cable, so the wire running down is the Weber one, because it fits very nicely in, if we can see here, it might have to come around there. So that is the perfect end for this. So the only problem we've then got is the hook inside the footwell, which we can have a look at. So here is the end where you'd normally get the Mk2 Golf cable hook coming through. There we go. And what we've got here is the Weber cable coming through. It's going through a washer, a bolt, and it's looped back round. So underneath the heat shrink, we've got a crimp, like you'd probably see on the cables in the gym. So on the big weight machines. And I think that's a much better way than using the little grub screws that you usually see on these type of method. So, this gearbox is not the one that arrived with the car. So we're good, you know, about ready to go. The car's jacked up in the air, just try and run it through the gears. We go for first gear and it just sounds like 2 gears having a fight. Ow. Second gear work, third, fourth, fifth and reverse. But first gear, no matter what we did, putting oil in it helped. So the gearbox was a bit low on oil. Put fresh oil in it. No real load. First gear, absolutely trash. So fortunately, as part of getting it running, I had to source a gearbox. So this one, that's the code there. This is an O2J, I think this is EVS, not entirely sure. This one is out of a Mark IV AUM 20 valve, 5-speed. This one. This one has this one's been freshly rebuilt or recently rebuilt by the previous owner. Has oil that looks like you could put it back in the bottle and sell it. So that one is good to go. But that was something I didn't expect to have to do, change the gearbox and the drive shaft. I'm not a big fan of powder coats. It's just a small note, because we've got the cam cover, the gearbox that was in it, and this a few mounts. So if we look here, you see a little bit that's peeled away. This powder coat has sort of formed a skin over the whole piece of aluminium, this mount bracket, and it's not really bonded with it that well. So underneath it'll be this corroded aluminium. It's not something I'd get if that was just even spray paint. So yeah, let's have a look at the gearbox that was in it. Right, you can see another red disaster right here. This is an O2A. You can tell the difference. The O2J hasn't got such a square end where the diff is. So this one's kaput, first gear kaput. That's why we've had to change it. So one of the last things to talk about before getting on to actually mapping this thing is the sensors, engine input. So what's on here, what's still good, and what had to be added or changed. Point stick. So here's the original Weber throttle position sensor. It is massive, but it still works. It works just fine. So that has stayed. The Volkswagen coolant sensors, or sensor. You've got the two here. You've got one for the clocks, one for the ECU. I think I had to change one of those because it was a bit corroded. This you're going to get a better help from having a intake air temp, and as we haven't got a manifold, there's a sensor I've added just here, which is in the vicinity of the throttles. So we're not going to put it inside here, but we're at least near. These are going to take a mix of fresh air and radiator. So that's going to give us some truth. And it'll be able to use things to adjust the fuel, or maybe trim the spark for hot weather or heat soak. So the one more thing we need, which was missing, was you can go and map this car at a rolling road, and they'll use their own wideband lambda sensor, so they can set up the fueling. But the benefits of having one on your car, if it's running an aftermarket ECU, allows someone to make a change right there on your car on the road. It can be used for closed loop control as well. It can be a diagnostic tool. If you've got a gauge as well and you're looking at it, you can tell if it's running lean, rich, if there's a problem with the sensor. So that's one thing I insisted that we add, and that had to be a little bung had to add into the exhaust and the track slag system. So we've still got a few trim panels left to put it back in here, but there's two things to show you. So I was talking about the wideband lambda gauge. So we've got the latest one from AM here with their new FAE sensor, and this gauge, although it's supposed to be 52mm, which is the standard size, they're always a bit bigger. So this is another little thing I've got involved with. So here we've got a 3D printed housing for it. Let's turn it on and have a look. But there's also something else to look at that we can try and capture both at once. So from this different type of ECU, we've not got the coil out anymore for the tacho. So from the max ECU, we've got an output for 5 volt, and we've got a tack converter. So let's have a little look what that does on here. We've got a rev gauge sweep, and here the AM is heating the O2 sensor, ready to read. And this will allow me to map the fueling on the drive on the road before it goes anywhere near some hard use like rolling road, or if it ever goes to a track. I don't know if I'm going to get him on track or not, probably not. Oh, it's still picking up some air fuel mixture from when we drove it in. There we go, 13.9 to 1. That's cool. It's just a time to add a little bit about other little challenges that you find. This is why I think it was so hard for people to, whoever's worked on this before, to try and get this going. There were so many things that were fighting. So we've already had gearbox problems, spark, the wrong coil, we've had no crank signal, we had fuel pressure problems, fuel hose problems, damaged injectors from the crash, and the circlips on those were damaged. We had the alternator was 5mm over where the custom bracket that was made, so it's been welded and there's some bar threaded through. Well, that was 5mm over, and that was obviously screaming its nuts off. So I've even had to do some. There's been cutting, welding, grinding, and I think I'd just be wiring and mapping. But what else have we had? Oh, this was a great one. This was a great one. No thermostat. So a thermostat, it has the seal, it forms part of the ceiling as well. So having no thermostat meant as soon as the coolant got around, out it was going. Great. I've had to do an awful lot of little bits as well. So we've had just little things to get it to sit right. So the radiator's been lowered because it was touching the slam panel. We didn't have an outlet here for I like running with a expansion tank. These radiators, I think it's just when it gets to 1.1 bar, a bit like when your expansion tank bubbles over, if you're overheating, and it comes out and flows down the chassis leg. This one is just going to flow out of this little fitting here, back to add in out the front. Wow, I'm thinking even more things. Even the power steering, the power steering set was only half installed, so we've had to finish that off. There's a lot of things on this car. Oil cooler was fitted well. That was good. Well done, Jamie. Speedo cable, that needed to be done. Clutch and brakes needed to be bled. Well, I hope we all agree this thing's bloody cool. Now that it all works, he looks good. I even have warmed to the red paint now. Maybe needs redoing. The only thing left really is this an engine that was rebuilt over 10 years ago that is now in its running in phase? Let's find out. Wish me luck.
The white Mk2 GTI has been off the road for a few years, so the first place to go is to get a roadworthiness check in the form of a UK MOT test. With an MOT pass, this white GTI can be used on the road again. This enables ECU road mapping of part load and drivability, before tuning for full load on the CTG dyno.
Never driven it with this engine before.
Last time I drove it, it had a very non-responsive 8 valve.
Ah.
Yeah, not the lovely 8 valve that we all know.
It starts picking up higher because it's got you got cams and short throttle, so it's kind of like everything's up the top.
Yeah.
Tell this is a VR6 driver, it's always in a high gear.
I know, yeah, it's exactly that.
So put it in fourth and give it some beans. Picking up, it's like 4.5, isn't it?
It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. But no, you're right, because I do drive the VR6, I'm always in that higher gear. I'm never in a revvy gear, it's always... But then the VR6 just drones, you have to kind of back off the throttle, because it's just too loud. It's just really lovely to drive, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's usable, but it's powerful at the same time. You know, just showing down then a minute ago, it's
I mean,
plenty quick enough, isn't it? You know, it's not...
You just have to rev it.
Yeah, and I'm not used to that, because I've always been an 8 valve man. You drive it torquely, don't you?
Yeah.
You know,
8 valves,
in a higher gear.
And the VR6 12 valve is a bit like a 8 valve with 6 cylinders.
Yeah.
Riding in this would be as smooth as that Mini that just rode past. It's like, it just seems to be comfy seats, comfy suspension.
I can't remember it being this good. I really can't.
I don't know what's well, you put
You've raised it a little bit, haven't you? So you've raised it a little bit, though, haven't you?
It's raised it an inch. Every coil over has been raised 1 inch.
Yeah.
And it still looks low. It still looks cool.
Yeah.
You're going straight over, but watch out. There you go. That was it.